Support for Children's Services is on the April 8th ballot for Jasper County, Missouri voters. I'm Lisa Allegas, and you're watching Newsmakers. In this edition, we learn about a proposed quarter-cent sales tax for Jasper County voters. It's called the Children's Services Tax. We'll talk with members of the coalition called Jasper County for Kids about why they feel the tax is needed and the solutions it can help fund. We'll also discuss how the quarter-cent sales tax would be dispersed and see the impact of such a tax by talking with Jasper County Sheriff about the quarter-cent law enforcement sales tax. But we begin our conversation with an assessment of the needs of children in Jasper County from Terry Wachter, a member of the Jasper County for Kids Coalition, and Stephanie Teese, Executive Director of Children's Haven, and Betsy Mentz, Executive Director of Children's Center. Thank you all for joining us and being here today.
Happy to be here.
Conditions for children are assessed by the state and also compiled by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And the composite rank for Jasper County moved from 83rd out of 114 counties down to 98th. So what are the factors creating negative conditions for kids?
You know, there are so many indicators in there that are just challenges for our kids, from mental health needs to child abuse and neglect rates to homelessness and poverty. And our families, our kids are struggling as a result of that.
So some of the statistics that changed for the worse do include more children who live in poverty, 24.8%, unintentional deaths or suicide, which went from 48% in 2013-ish to nearly 66% between 2018 and 2022. And the number of students re-entering state custody went up from 6 per 1,000 to 6.4. Substance abuse hospitalizations increased, as well as mental health hospitalizations for children, 1 to 19, which went from 71 to 125 per 10,000 in the population. Now, it seems like a big jump for those who might even be considering suicide. Let's discuss all these different statistics that are in this Kids Count book and what they mean for our kids.
You know, I think families of all types and across all economic stratas experience stress. And I just think in the last 4 or 5 years, it just seems that we have so many stressors on families that it affects the children. The children in turn, you know, during COVID, we all experienced some isolation. And then they go to school, they're cyberbullying, isolation at school. I just think there are just all sorts of reasons for them to struggle, if you will.
So, and these are mental health issues. Stephanie, you see families struggling, and you take in children whose parents may be involved in the court system. Are you seeing a growing demand for those services, and what other problems are you seeing?
You know, the courts will refer families to us for children to stay overnight at Children's Haven, but primarily our crisis care is children who are living at home with their parents, and a stressor occurs. And before things snowball, really, they'll call and ask for some help and support. And so we're able to get in there. And maybe that's housing instability. Maybe that is a job loss and financial instability, a medical emergency. There are all kinds of situations. And so just trying to be there for those kids has been huge.
Part of what your charity is designed to do is to keep kids out of the system, which can become complicated and even more difficult for parents when they're in a foster care system. So, and even worse, some go into the juvenile justice system. How is that an obstacle to improving conditions for these families if they get into the system? And I know you have kids with the Children's Center who may end up in the system. How does that all become an obstacle to their faring well?
We try to prevent that from happening, try to provide the resources they need before that becomes an obstacle they have to face. But if children are in the custody of the state, they may either be with family in a kinship placement, or they may be in a foster home. And those folks need more resources and supports to maintain those placements. You know, children's mental health and lots of issues are impacted when children are moved from home to home, and that instability with schools, and so just being able to provide respite care is a huge need, and needing resources for that.
And funding is part of the problem for charities like yours to do what they do. How dependent are you on extra funding, or donations?
You know, about 30% of our funding is stable. The rest is every year is trying to find a fundraising event, donors, businesses, grants, and thankfully our community is very supportive. But just to have stable, reliable funding so that agencies can increase their capacity to meet the increased need of children and families today will be huge.
Yeah. Betsy, how important is that for the Children's Center, which does have therapists on duty, but you said you have a waiting list, is that correct?
Yes.
For your services. Tell us what you do there so that people understand.
Yeah, it's highly important. The critical services that we provide to child abuse victims, they come in, they have a forensic interview and possibly a medical examination and then therapy. And therapy is ongoing. So last year we had 2,090 therapy sessions. We have 3 therapists and we have a waiting list because the need is great and we want to be able to continue to take care of these children to lead them to hope and healing and a better future.
And I mean, childhood abuse is something we all hate to hear about, but it is a problem in a community, especially where poverty is a big problem. So how can having more stable funding make a difference for you? Could you expand services?
Yes, I believe so. We are in the same boat where we're constantly looking for different ways to fund what we do because our services are provided free. So we look at grants and fundraisers and donors, and we heavily rely on those things so that we can continue to grow.
So families that often need services that could help their children often have difficulty accessing them. Why is that one of the problems that you all seem to have noted for us? Is it access by getting to them, or is it access affordability? What's the problem?
I think it's probably a little of all of it. You know, sometimes parents might lack insurance and maybe not be able to access a service that needs funding. So I think it's probably a little bit of all of those financial struggles that families have. You know, you lose a job and revenue in your family comes down significantly. And I think that affects all aspects of the family, including the children and the children's need, you know, to help them not be anxious and depressed and all the things we've seen in recent years that our children experience.
So school graduation rates have improved but are still below the state average or state levels. And it was a goal of the school board's administration to improve those. Are those mental health statistics that we're hearing about that children are struggling, does that affect graduation rates as well? And does that make it difficult for them to have a future?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can't focus, if you don't have the stability in your life to be able to focus and concentrate when you're at school, that impacts your involvement in school, your success, and attendance rates too. I mean, if housing is an issue, transportation is an issue, then that really impacts a kid's ability to focus and to be there to participate and then to graduate.
So how would this tax be a solution for both of your organizations that try to help kids?
I would say really just the reliable, stable funding allows organizations to increase their capacity to meet that that growing need of kids, and that's more important now than it ever has been before. If it's an investment in children, and we know that every dollar invested in prevention saves $24 in health costs later on down the road, and that's an investment in our kids if we want them to thrive and change things generationally.
Betsy, how would it make a difference for you? And I know you have kids, you have a waiting list. I mean, how do you attack that problem?
I agree. I think that this could help us immensely take care of the kids in the future. And the statistics are there. They're not going away. This is for us to take care of. And if we can have a remedy for this to take care of more children that have the mental health needs, then we could provide a better future for not only them, but our whole community and generations to come.
And children of abuse, are they more inclined to have depression, other mental health issues?
Yeah, I believe that children that have been abused, whether it's physical, sexual, or neglect, they have a whole other slew of issues and obstacles that they are trying to overcome, and they need our help with that.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. There's obviously some problems for children in our area. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will discuss the proposed children's service tax some more and the solutions these groups say it will provide and how it will be administered. As we go to break, another look at the kids count data and where Jasper County has improved and worsened. On April 8th, Jasper County residents will be asked to approve a quarter-cent sales tax to create a Children's Services Fund. It is possible under a Missouri law established nearly 30 years ago. The fund's sole purpose is to provide services to protect the well-being and safety of children and youth 19 or less and to strengthen families. The tax could generate up to $5 million each year with an average cost per family of $52. Joining us to discuss how it would be dispersed and what groups would be eligible for the funds are Jen Black joining our conversation, and she is the Executive Director of the Alliance of Southwest Missouri, and Ashley Micklethwaite with Jasper County for Kids, and returning with us is Terry Wachter. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Jen, you're looking for this fund to help offer solutions to problems that we outlined in our first segment earlier. What are some of the services that you hope that the tax could support?
I think across the board for our county, there's incredible organizations doing great work to help prevent terrible things from happening for kiddos and to support families when they find themselves in a crisis. And so you heard from Stephanie at Children's Haven and that respite care and that housing for kids. It's just essential for families who are in crisis. At the Alliance, we offer parenting classes, and it's child-parent relationship training that's based on play therapy. We have licensed counselors that teach those classes, and it just helps de-escalate bad situations and help heal relationships. And so they get a bag of toys that are kid age appropriate that parents learn to get down on the floor and let kids lead the play, and it just heals relationships. It's incredible how it works. And so funding for that, we could offer so many more classes. We have waiting lists for those classes as well. And so you think about Lafayette House and just other organizations, Loving Grace, that could really benefit from these funds that just will create a much healthier environment for our kids in Jasper County.
I know one of the things you do, and it seems maybe small, but you often have training for parents when it comes to car seats and keeping kids safe. But one of the Kids Count statistics is that kids get injured.
Yes.
Sometimes, I mean, we have the mental health issue, but some of it's also just plain old safety in a vehicle.
Absolutely.
Are there, how are you funded now? And do you struggle to make grow the classes you need to grow?
Right. As issues arise in the county, we're constantly looking and assessing. That's not just the Alliance, that's all of us as a whole in the nonprofit community as to how we can better meet those needs and prevent injuries like you're talking about. And so these funds will help bolster and secure certain programs that then may allow us to reallocate funds to things that don't apply for this particular funding stream. And so, I think of full potential, and you're talking about graduation rates, and they say if a kid is plugged into one extracurricular activity, the odds of them dropping out of school are lessened, and if they're plugged into two, they almost never drop out. And so we have full potential, and we'll help with registration fees and equipment fees. And so those funds don't necessarily apply to this funding stream, but we could reallocate funds that we use for parenting classes or we use for our Good Dads program that then could help support that.
Excellent, yeah. So, Terry or Ashley, other counties have established children's services funds. Have they been successful? Did you use them as a model?
We have.
We have. There's 11 other counties in the state of Missouri who have established this fund. St. Charles County was the first, so it's been up and running for quite some time. When they started, they ranked 86th out of 114 counties on Kids Count, that assessment of how well children are doing in the county. They went from 86th to 1st.
Wow.
And they continue to maintain that in the top 5. Clay County decreased bullying and suspensions and increased academic success 11%.
So you've seen some proof that it's worth.
Absolutely.
These taxes do make a difference.
Teen pregnancies across the board are down 50%. And we have a lot of teen pregnancies. We rank 92nd in the state for teen pregnancies. Think about what we could do if those teen pregnancies were down. How much impact that would make.
Yeah. Why push for this kind of tax? Terry, I mean, why is the quarter-cent sales tax a better option than a different kind of tax?
Well, if the success that the other counties have had isn't enough, our children do have needs. We talked about those here this afternoon, and definitely have lots of needs. And we have good agencies addressing those needs and offering services. But as the needs have grown, so does the need to fund those services. And they need stability and a sustainability in funding. And the Children's Services Fund offers some of that. There's no magic wand that solves all problems for all families. We're not saying that. But this does certainly offer the families in Jasper County some sense of continuity for services, and for the agencies a source of funding that's a little more reliable.
Do we feel like a sales tax is more fair since it comes from everyone, even people maybe traveling through the area?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
You know, when I think about it, $5 million a year that will go to children's services, it's a no-brainer. And you break that down per family, and that's just local. It's not counting the people that come to town to spend passing through our neighboring communities. But $52 a year, that's a no-brainer for me. I'd throw that money in a pot in a heartbeat to be able to help that many kids.
And we want to talk about how this offers prevention as well as treatment programs. Jen, a lot of what you do is prevention-based,
Absolutely.
correct?
Absolutely. We're trying to prevent child abuse. We're trying to prevent all unintentional injury, like you talked about, all kinds of things, safer roadways, all the things to help prevent that. But a lot of times in our prevention talk, we talk about we are preventing, trying to prevent substance use within kids. But sometimes we're trying to prevent coping mechanisms, and so that mental health piece is critical. And how do we get to the core issue that's causing some of these coping mechanisms, and how do we heal that? And so again, you come back to what the basis of this funding and what that could do for our community is just incredible, the impact.
Kids might turn to alcohol or something to cope
Sure.
when they have other problems in
Right,
the home.
and abuse. I mean, you know, stresses are high, and you don't know where your limits are until you're put in that situation. And so I'm not condoning abuse by any shape, any form, but I can see how it could happen. And so how do we give them tools to help them minimize their stress, whether it's financial or whether it's just pressures from work, and how do we teach them those coping mechanisms to prevent the abuse?
Yeah. So how would an organization apply to get funds? You're setting up a board, is that right, Terry?
Yes, the Children's Services Funds all establish a citizen board, and in our case it would be 9 citizens, from each part of the county, and they would be Jasper County residents and serving Jasper County agencies and Jasper County children. They have a 3-year term on those boards, and they make decisions, hopefully in collaboration with our community agencies, about the priority needs of children at any given year or time. And they then will accept from the agencies an application. It's kind of a grant process, if you will. They apply for the dollars. The boards give some good consideration and discussion about that and make the decisions. So local people making decisions about local children and local needs.
Yeah. Ashley, are there rules about who can and cannot serve on these boards under that legislation as to, hey, conflict of interest?
Absolutely. So any organization that applies for funding or has funding from the Children's Service Fund, none of the people on that organization can sit on the board. And you have to be a Jasper County citizen. So that's important, that it's an independent group of people, that it's local, looking at our own kids.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a brief break, and thank you all for telling us all this great information. And when we return, we will hear how the quarter-cent law enforcement sales tax is distributed and making a difference. A quarter-cent sales tax can make a difference. How money would be distributed for the children's service tax is similar to how the law enforcement sales tax is currently working in Jasper County. Joining us to give us perspective on a quarter-cent sales tax is Jasper County Sheriff Randy Kaiser. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, typically, how much does the law enforcement sales tax generate each year? Because it is a quarter-cent sales tax.
Yeah, currently, it's producing about just a little over $5 million. When I first started about 12 years ago, it was in the high 3 millions, but now it's just a little over $5 million a year that it produces.
So let's talk about that. Explain the process for how that is distributed, because you two have a board like this children's service tax would, correct?
That's correct. So the majority of that tax money comes to the sheriff's office and is used for sheriff's office expenses. But there's part of that money is set aside to help municipalities, our smaller municipalities in Jasper County. And that money is usually in the form of about $250,000, maybe a little bit more than $250,000. Each of those municipalities will submit a request to the board that oversees that money, and then that request is considered and determination is made about how much of that request they would get.
And it is considered like a grant funding, correct?
It's similar to a grant funding, that's correct, yes.
Why do you think this is a fair way to ensure tax money can serve its intended purpose?
Well, first of all, you have a board of individuals, a board of Jasper County residents that sits and reviews each of the requests. And this board is appointed by the commissioners. It's a nonpartisan board. Those individuals are basically there to serve the community, and so they can look at that kind of objectively and say, here's what we think is an appropriate use of that money, and so it's equitable across the board.
Yeah. As sheriff, you often work with agencies that serve children's needs, especially children who, maybe victims of crime or abuse. How do you think this proposed tax can make a difference?
Well, certainly it would provide a stable source of funding for programs that we either currently are doing in Jasper County or would like to do with regards to children and mental health needs. It provide that stable foundation, or that stable funding that would need to continue those programs. How
often are the situations that you deal with involving children? Are kids involved in many of the criminal cases one way or the other?
I would say a high percentage. We have a school resource officer that deals with a lot of kids' issues. Oftentimes we respond to calls, it may be a domestic violence call or it may be a disturbance call of some sort, and kids are involved in those types of calls. And so a high percentage of the types of calls that we go on do involve kids.
And then you would be involved in child abuse cases or
right. Child abuse investigations and neglect investigations, all those are encompassed in that as well.
Our county has had issues with dealing with drug addiction and drug abuse. Are kids often part of the victimization of that kind of situation? Well,
for sure. And, statistically, it's well documented, well researched that addiction problems oftentimes start among adolescents and juveniles. And so if you can intercept that, if you can get out ahead of that, you can affect the addiction rates later on down the road. And Jasper County is like many other counties in the United States. We do have serious problems with addiction-related issues, for sure.
What can be the challenge in getting a tax like this passed when it goes before voters?
Well, I think that one of the challenges is for voters to understand what's on the ballot. People will oftentimes, if they know what's on the ballot and they believe in that cause, they'll vote for it. If a voter shows up at the poll and they don't know that that's on the ballot or don't understand what that's about, especially with regards to a tax, a lot of times they'll vote no because voters are sometimes hesitant unless they really know what the cause is.
Why was a sales tax a good option for law enforcement, especially since that means it's everyone in the county, but even those who visit the county?
Yeah, that's a great point. First of all, our sales tax revenue comes from 60% of that revenue comes from out of the county individuals visiting here, touring through Jasper County, or just stopping for a meal and some gas. So that's helped, obviously, and then also it's you could consider it like a use tax. Doesn't affect everybody the same, because if somebody buys a new boat, they may pay a little bit more than someone who doesn't buy a new boat. And so it seems like sales tax is a more equitable way to distribute that.
Do you have a personal opinion about the children's services tax?
Well, I can't advocate, for a tax, obviously, but I can advocate for programs and causes that benefit kids. And anybody that knows me knows that I do that. I've spent majority of my professional life trying to make our community better. And I think that anytime you can introduce programs that deal with benefiting juveniles, benefiting adolescents, especially when it comes to mental health causes, that's money well spent and a cause well worthwhile.
Have you seen mental health being an issue that seems to be rearing its head more so?
Absolutely. You talk to anybody in law enforcement that's been in law enforcement for a minute, and they will tell you that the mental health problems that we deal with today are tenfold what they were 20 years ago, and I would definitely concur with that. I don't know the causes behind that, and that's probably for another show for another day, but for sure it is a very significant issue, and a lot of these issues, just like with the addiction-related issues, can be intercepted early on and should be for the benefit of our community and for those people who suffer from those types of problems.
All right, Sheriff Randy Kaiser, thank you for sharing all this information about the law enforcement sales tax.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. The children's service tax goes on the ballot April 8th. Be sure to exercise your right to vote. That wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Allegas. Thanks to our guest, and thank you for watching.